Good evening, everyone. It looks like we have a good number of people. I think we can get started maybe at 9:05, submitting a few others. (6:05).
All right, it is 6:05. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for taking some time out of your evening to join us for this community workshop. My name is Christian Gutierrez. I'm the Housing Services Manager with the City of Encinitas. I'm joined by Jennifer Gates, Policy Planning Manager, and Nicole Piano-Jones, a Management Analyst for the City of Encinitas. We also have the Opportunity Consulting team that are here, and they'll have a chance to introduce themselves in a couple of slides. So we'll go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So quick agenda review. So we're going to do an introduction of the Opportunity Consulting team, define equity and how it relates to housing, review our housing equity study and the OLE research approach of the study. We're going to break out into listening and breakout groups, and then we're going to have a chance to do some questions and discussion. So I would suggest you all, if you have any questions as they're coming, make sure you write them down. We're going to have an opportunity to go over those questions, and hopefully some of those questions are answered as we go along in the presentation. Next slide, please. So again, welcome. The purpose, for the community forum is two main reasons. One is to provide community members with information about the process and the objective of the city's racial and ethnic equity study. And number two, and very important, is solicit insights from the community members about your experiences and the perspectives of housing equity in Encinitas. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background. So why an equity study in Encinitas? So we want to do an analysis of impediments to fair housing. So we want to explore what impediments there are or exist in the city. Also, this equity study is a major part of our 6th cycle housing element. So it's a commitment to understanding the potential barriers that exist in the city. Specifically, this relates to program 3H of the housing element. And lastly, building upon the work of the City of Encinitas Equity Committee. They recently gave recommendations to City Council, and part of those recommendations is some of the work that we're doing here is going to be able to support some of those recommendations that were made by the city's equity committee. Next slide, please. So one of the major questions of this equity study is, why is the City of Encinitas less racially and ethnically diverse in population than the rest of the region? So compared to San Diego County, why is the City of Encinitas less racially and ethnically diverse? So the charge of the study is to ensure that the City of Encinitas fosters a diverse and inclusive community where all racial and ethnic groups have access to housing. And so the result of this study, we're hoping to receive recommendations, housing recommendations related to policies and practices that will drive towards a more equitable and inclusive and diverse City of Encinitas. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to turn it over to the Opportunity Consulting team. I'm going to turn it over to Iris Bongill, who is the CEO of Opportunity Consulting.
Thank you very much, Christian. Good evening, everyone. We are so pleased to have this opportunity to work with the City of Encinitas and to also hear from you all as community members tonight. We'll share with you tonight, as Christian said, our approach to this project and to this study, and about the work we've done thus far. And more importantly, we want to make sure we leave time to listen to you, which is the main purpose of tonight, so that you can share your perspectives and experiences with us. So on this slide is the team. This is the full team that we have working on this racial equity audit. Most of them are here today, and I will just give them a quick moment to just introduce themselves. We can start with the order on the slide. Itai.
Hello everyone, Itai Mizrav, a managing partner at Opportunity Consulting, working with states, districts, cities across the countries on these issues, and so happy to be with you tonight and share some of the work in Encinitas.
Thank you, Itai. Jessica?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Rodriguez-Boudreau, and I'm also very pleased to be here tonight. I've been a project manager for this project, working on process, timelines, tying all the pieces together, connecting really closely with the city. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Connor?
Hi there, good evening, everyone. My name is Connor Harrison. I'm the policy manager at Opportunity Consulting. Work across a number of our projects, and I'm very excited to work on this project as I'm originally from North County, San Diego as well. So very pleased to be here.
Great, thank you, Connor. And Felicity.
Hi, everyone. My name is Felicity Sanchez. You may have received a phone call from me recently promoting these groups. Thank you, everyone who picked up the phone and decided to sign up. We really appreciate your participation today. Just a little bit about me. I'm a research policy analyst with Opportunity Consulting. I work a lot with the data, and I have a personal tie to the local area. I used to live in Oceanside for a number of years. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicity. And we also have Eva Rosen, who's a part of our team. She is a housing policy researcher, and she's not with us tonight, but we wanted to make sure to include her on this. So now we'd love to learn a little bit about who's in the room with us. Since we've had an opportunity to introduce ourselves, we're going to put up a poll. We'd love for you all to take a moment and respond to the poll, letting us know a little bit about who we have in the room. We have 3 questions.
Hello.
Hello, yes.
Hi. I'm at the Encinitas Community and Senior Center. I'm somebody who lives in Encinitas, and I had gotten a flyer saying to be here on the 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I didn't get any update, but there's nobody here. So is that where you guys are? Is that what this Zoom meeting is for?
Well, the Zoom meeting is for, we are having a community meeting about the housing study, the housing equity study. So I think you're in the right place. And we are glad to have you here. So it is virtual. We were initially going to be in person, and I think COVID restrictions required us to go virtual. So that's why we're on Zoom, but we're happy to have you here, and we hope that you can both hear and see your screen and participate in the poll.
Okay.
And thank you for being here.
Sure.
All right. Let's go ahead and wrap up, maybe take a last moment to respond to the poll, and then we will close it. All right, let's close the poll now. Excellent. So it looks like we have a little bit of mixture of people who have been here, but by and large, the majority of the people here tonight have been in Encinitas for more than 25 years. Some diversity in the room as well. and also some diversity with age as well. So appreciate you're all taking the poll and just giving us a little bit of a sense of who we have in the room, which is always helpful since we couldn't be there in person. All right, next slide. All right, well, we wanted to share a little bit with you about Opportunity Consulting. We are a company based in Washington, D.C. that does work across the country, focusing on equity and public policy and on supporting partner clients in understanding gaps in equity and how to improve outcomes and opportunities, particularly for those who are most marginalized in our systems and institutions. And we work with a variety of clients across the country on policy issues, including housing, but also equity in education, civic participation, and other local issues impacting city workforce and workforce development. Here are a sampling of some of our recent and current projects and clients, which include cities as well as education and workforce systems. Thank you. So next, we just wanted to quickly ground ourselves in some norms for tonight and some community agreements for how we spend our time together. I'll go through these quickly. One is to just be curious, open, and respectful. Listen, learn, and seek to understand rather than respond, and consider how our words have meaning and impact. The other is to speak from our own experience. So oftentimes people say use I statements rather than generalizations, and that's often helpful in helping us all speak from our own points of view. Another is that no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. So we want to really use the collective knowledge in this room and understand that we all have blind spots sometimes, but that together we are better than we are individually. Seek learning rather than closure. This is actually really important for tonight. So understand that in a community forum of this nature, we fully expect that you will leave with some questions that are not answered. We are in the middle of a study. We want to share that study with you and tell you where we are and where we've been, and then really learn from you. And so this is not an opportunity to necessarily get closure. This is not a final report or a meeting about findings, but it really is a listening session. And then finally, we just ask that you practice raising your hand and really hold off on questions until we get to that portion. The second half of this, the first half will be us talking to you mostly, and the second half will be you talking to us. And that second half will be an opportunity for you to raise your hands and us to take you off mute. Next. All right, so we want to, this is a racial and ethnic equity study of housing in the city of Encinitas. And so we want to begin by establishing a common ground by defining terms that may sound similar, but are very different. And the implementation of one over another can really lead to dramatically different outcomes for people. And so we want to ground ourselves in what we mean by equity. But to start, we'd love to ask you what you think of when you hear equity and how you define equity. So we'd love to have you open the chat and answer the question, how do you define equity? So we'll give it just a minute and we'll see what folks say. And maybe Felicity, if you can help by maybe reading out a couple of the things that you see in terms of definitions of equity, and then we'll move on. Equal opportunity, I see. Great. All are welcome. Excellent. Everyone has opportunities to resources that they need to thrive. Thank you. Great definitions. Equal opportunity. Excellent. All right, well, let's move on to the next slide. Thank you so much. These are exactly the kinds of conversations that will set us up well. And we want to make sure to define for you all some of the ways that we are using these terms tonight and throughout the study. So I'll start by saying that the goal for all of our work, with all of the work we do across the country, and certainly for the City of Encinitas, is for everyone to have equal access and opportunities, which is something that I saw in the chat, people defined as equity. And you may recognize this illustration from the children's book called The Giving Tree. So here we're going to use these illustrations to demonstrate the difference between some of the key terms and ideas. Starting with this illustration on the screen, we see two children that have unequal access to a system. And in this case, the system is really a tree that's depicted with fruit. In reality, these systems, of course, tend to be things like housing and education and healthcare and other social systems that are created as a public good and a way to deliver public services. So think of the tree in that way. And the illustration shows one child has unequal access to opportunities and another one has a clear advantage, more fruit, and as the tree leans in their direction. And we know that there are programs that we look at that are public programs, programs in housing and in other systems where there are unequal outcomes or unequal opportunities that are set up. So for instance, in a first-time homebuyers program that may require as a prerequisite access to a certain level of capital in order to qualify. We know that those kind of prerequisites oftentimes disadvantage people from marginalized backgrounds and perhaps unintentionally, but that is something that happens. And so that's sort of a depiction of what inequality looks like. Next. So next, let's consider equality. And that means that opportunities, tools, and resources, such as the latter in this case, are evenly distributed regardless of the differential needs that people may have. But as you can see in this illustration, it shows that equality doesn't necessarily provide equal access. So we see that one child still has access to the fruit and the other one, although they have the exact same tool, the exact same size ladder, does not. And so sometimes an assumption that we make is that every system is strictly merit-based and that all people have equal access when they have the same tools and the same resources. But we know that that's actually not true and that there are additional barriers oftentimes that disadvantage some people and advantage others. And in this case, that is what we're looking at. And so when we think of equality, we know that we can provide the same things, but we oftentimes will not get to what we're looking for in the outcome, which is equal opportunity and equal access. Now let's contrast equality with equity. And equity calls for tools and resources that level the playing field and address that inequality that we saw. So in this case, we see that the ladder is longer for one child on the right who needs additional height to grab the fruit than the other child so that they can both have some access. And in a real world example, we know that providing, for instance, fee waivers for people who demonstrate financial need in a first-time homebuyer program or that demonstrate financial need may be an important way to address a barrier. So it may not be that you give everyone a fee waiver because everyone doesn't need it, but you may need to give a fee waiver to those who demonstrate financial need. So that may be a differentiated tool, but at the end, you're both having the access that you need. And that is a definition that we would consider equity, which is really what we're thinking about for this project. It may not be equal on everyone, but it is trying to give people what they need in a differentiated way so that they can access opportunities. And then finally, we wanted to include this idea of justice, which we really see as an extension of equity. And justice can take equity one step further by really addressing the systems themselves that advantage and disadvantage others. So in this case, we see that the tree, which is our system, and that justice is the process and the outcome that leads to long-term and sustainable change. And so we see those 2x4s that are really propping up the system, fixing the system, and we see those cords that are holding the tree down. And in this case, we see that both children can have equal tools because the system has been designed now in a way that doesn't disadvantage one over the other. And so in this sense, they've really fixed the tree or fixed the system. So how does that relate to what we're trying to think about when we consider housing? So it's those notions of equity and justice that really inform how we approach this work. We believe that every system is designed to get the results that it gets. So these kind of unfair advantages and disadvantages in the system are not the result of anything natural, unlike the tree, which is a natural sort of slant. These actually are created by practices, policies, assumptions that we make in our work or that we see in our work. It's actually very systemic in how these things have transpired. And so as we think about national barriers that exist in housing, we really hone in on issues like redlining and racialized zoning, predatory lending, and gentrification as ways and as examples of policies and practices that both produce and maintain inequities across the country. And then as we think about Encinitas and we go back to the original question that Christian put forth in the table where he said there's a question, there's a charge, and there's a result we're looking for. And when they went back to the original purpose of the study, it was really thinking about what makes Encinitas different in that there is additional diversity in other cities in San Diego proper, but Encinitas is less diverse from those cities that are close by in the region. And we know there's a reason for that. And part of this study will get at that reason. Are there systemic barriers and policies and practices that we're seeing in the city that research shows contribute to a lower diversity or contribute to lack of access to people who are not white? And that's something that we're going to be looking at. And so in this chart, you really see that Encinitas is near the bottom of a number of other cities in San Diego proper that has fewer non-white residents. And so that's part of, you know, the context of which we're approaching this study as well. Thank you. So now I'll turn it over to Itai Mizrav, and he will talk about the study itself and how we're approaching the study and more of what we want to learn from it.
Thank you very much, Iris. The question in front of us, what is a housing equity study? Maybe I'll start with what it's not. It is not an evaluation of the city of Encinitas. That's not the purpose of the work. What it is an evidence and research-driven inquiry process that is aimed at one purpose, which is equipping the city with keys to become a better place, a more welcoming city, more diverse, with more business, with improvement that is felt by everyone, by every resident of the city of Encinitas that feels improvement to their life quality. That's the purpose of the study. The final aim of the work is not a finding, but that identification of those opportunities that the city has. And I'm looking at some of the comments in the chat to suggest ideas that we could think about. You know, maybe the kid with the ladder can move to the other side. Well, maybe this study will help carve a path that would show how we can do that. We want to focus on the facts on the ground and help them lead us towards opportunities for Encinitas to improve. We can skip the next slide. We're going to do it by asking three guiding questions to the study. The first one was raised already by the Encinitas team, which is the main question: is why is Encinitas less racially and ethnically diverse than the surrounding region? People can live wherever they want in the San Diego region, and that artificial municipal border between one municipality and the other, we see results in demographic changes. So what are the drivers of that? So that leads us to question 2 and 3 there. The first question: what are those drivers of inequality in housing in Encinitas? And can we pinpoint the specific drivers like the policies, the practice, potential racial and ethnic biases? And then once we do, again, the aim of the study, how can the city of Encinitas create more opportunities for historically marginalized groups in Encinitas? So what are those opportunities for the city that are in the city's scope of control? I'll talk about that in a second. To create those, to open a portal for people who are currently not part of city life and to create a better, more welcoming Encinitas. And we're going to do that by following an approach that we call the outcome-led equity approach. And it rests on 4 pillars. I'm going to start from the right and go clockwise. We want to emphasize the local context as the first pillar. We're interested in the lived experiences of people in Encinitas. We're trying to record and document them so we could understand them better and use them as a foundation of facts that would move us forward. It is not about the intention. The study doesn't focus on the intention or what policy is supposed to do, but how those policies are actually felt when we look from the resident's perspective. And we do that through multiple means of engagement, like focus groups and other ways. We want to focus on the possible. I've started speaking to this a minute ago. This is not a study that is aimed to result in some fancy report that you put on the website and say, here is the equity study report. No, we're looking for a technical plan that would point to those areas that are in the city's control, not areas that are not in the control, the levers, the drivers, the keys that are associated with municipal policies and practices that could drive for a more diverse and welcoming city. Making findings accessible. We want to make sure that the study results in findings that anybody could understand, not wonky research findings and not something that just bureaucrats in the municipality, but anybody, including everyone that are in this meeting, can understand and embrace. And to do all of those things, we have the approach that we call the OLE approach, the outcome-led equity approach, that I wanna tell you about in the next slide. The outcome-led equity approach is a somewhat different inquiry process from others that maybe you've heard about. Like I said, it's not an evaluation where we're gonna go and see the policies that are of what makes the city of Encinitas and then rate those policies if they are equitable or not. That's not a process we believe is effective at all. Instead, we take a 3-step process: the what, the why, and the how. Step 1, the what, is going to focus on trying to understand what does inequality in Encinitas look like, and replace those big words, particularly that word equity study, that many people can take in many different ways, with simple charts, simple ideas about things that are potentially unequal in the city, like access to affordable housing, that we could look, agree on. Yes, this is unequal, and have that serve as a foundation for the study. This is what we're focusing on. We want to fix this. It's not something larger. It's contained to that measurable inequality that we're taking in the first step of the process. The next step, the next phase, the why, is where we want to isolate those drivers of that inequality that specifically belong in the factors that the city can control. Of course, many of the drivers maybe are out of the city control. For example, historical drivers or other things that may not be in the city's control. But we're interested in those that are in the city's control, and we'll try to isolate those that would later become the keys for improvement into a more diverse and welcoming city. And then in the last step, the how, we're going to take those identified drivers of inequality, those areas that we've identified apply in Encinitas. We work in many different cities, and research points us to the list of potential drivers, but every single place is going to have different ones that apply. And those that apply in Encinitas are going to be the foundation of that last phase, the how. This is the first time, that last phase, we're going to hone in on those practices and policies and said, if we agree that that is unequal, and we agree that those are the drivers, here are opportunities in the day-to-day practices of the city that could be utilized to improve access to affordable housing, to diversify different neighborhoods in the city, to get all of the outcomes that we're interested in. So that final phase is going to focus on those 3 steps together. How does inequality look like? what are the city control factors, drivers of inequality, and then what are the evidence-based strategies that the city can take to address them. And hopefully that would situate the community and the leadership in a place where they could implement feasible practices, changes, improvements that would be felt on the ground.
Thank you, Itai. Jessica, you want to pick up here?
Sure thing. So we began our inquiry by looking at background research and data analysis. We then shifted to conducting expert interviews with members of the community during the month of April. We are now leading community and stakeholder engagement. This community forum that you are all participating in is one of the many ways that we are conducting opportunities for the community, for members of the community to be involved. Other ways that we did this was through launching a bilingual online survey. We are holding various focus groups this week. And as always, we are open to conversations and community input around this inquiry. In the next 2 months, we will be finalizing and analyzing the findings so that there is a report with recommendations. And I'm just trying to be very mindful of time. That's why I went through this very quickly, but we will have an opportunity at the end to answer any questions specifically about process. Next slide, thank you. And so like my colleague said, we really are excited to spend some time hearing from you all and having this be an opportunity to listen. If we were in person, this would look a lot different. We would all be sitting in tables together. There would be large poster board and sticky notes for all of you to sit together and work together on a group discussion. What's wonderful is that in this virtual setting, we'll be able to do something very similar. In the next minute, my colleague will be assigning you randomly into breakout rooms. So there will be 4 breakout rooms. One of us from Opportunity Consulting will be in each breakout room facilitating. What we're going to do for the next 20 minutes will be together in our groups answering 3 questions and using this online virtual whiteboard to see the conversation that's taking place. We will then regroup and come back. Next slide, please. The important piece to note here is that it's important that you appoint a timekeeper and someone to report out. Once we return from our, once we come back from our breakout sessions, we will have an opportunity to share highlights and insights from these group conversations. Next slide. Just want to preview what the questions are, and then I'll turn it to my colleague to break out into the sessions. So the discussion questions for our breakouts are: 1, what has your experience been living and or working in Encinitas? 2, the rest of the region looks to be more diverse than Encinitas. Why do you think that's the case? And 3, what would a more inclusive and welcoming community for all residents in Encinitas look like, and how do we get there? And so your facilitator will explain how you can do this using the online board. And at this moment, I'll turn it over to my colleague who will break us into breakout groups. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to put everyone into breakout groups, and then we will give you a link, and you'll be able to use this link in your discussions. These discussions won't be long. We'll give about 10 minutes, and then we'll bring everyone back to the main room, and we'll have an open discussion where we'll facilitate an open discussion. So the breakout rooms won't be particularly long. We'll just be enough time to let you all gather your thoughts on it. All right, so I'm going to open up the
Question.
rooms. Yeah.
What question for you? I'm wondering whether you've observed the comments from many of the participants who would prefer not to break out into groups. Did you hear that question?
Yes, I hear you now.
I can speak to that. We are going to have an opportunity. We're going to break up into groups so we have small discussions, and then we'll have an opportunity as a whole group to go over these discussions and So if we can, it would just be for a short period of time.
Yeah.
The opportunity to discuss will be allowed as soon as the discussions or the breakout groups are completed.
Perhaps it would be more equitable if we all joined in together in a single discussion.
I have a question. Why don't we let the experts run this meeting like they're supposed to?
Yeah, if we could allow, if you would allow us to continue into these breakout groups, we would really appreciate it. Like I said, when we come back from breakout groups, there's going to be plenty of time to discuss these questions and hear the voices of everyone that's in this workshop. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So you should see that you have been invited to a breakout room, and you can select to join, it looks like.
So I'm in room 1, Iris, you're in 2, Itai, you're in 3, and Connor, you're in 4. Oops.
Okay, great.
Maybe take 2 minutes. People are kind of coming back, so we'll let people come back, and then I know Jessica is gonna get us from here to the Q&A. Thank you all for coming back, and we know that that was a quick time. We hope you had an opportunity to put some thoughts down, and then we also wanted to respect the desire for community time together. So Jessica, you want to maybe just take
Sure.
a couple minutes?
Yeah, thank you so much. And so that was a quick discussion, but it was very fruitful, at least in the breakout room that I was in. Since I was the one who was assigned to report out, I'll kick us off, but then I would love to hear from the other breakout rooms if the discussions look different or if they look the same. For the first question about what has your experience been working in or living in Encinitas, folks at my table talked about Encinitas being an excellent community, that this person decided to live in the community because of the quality of the schools, the ambiance, the coastal proximity, among other things. There was also discussion about how Encinitas is a place where there is a lot of conversation about race, and it feels like it's a location that is obsessed with this. And so we talked about that. And then finally, how diversity of the community has diminished. There was conversation about just where affordable units are going, and talking some more about that. So that was really around the first question. I would love to hear from other participants, from other breakout groups, especially around the second question. What would a more inclusive and welcoming community for all residents in Encinitas look like? How do we get there? And then the third question as well. So.
Does group 2 want to go? I'm happy to show my screen, or I'm sorry, Julie, is that Julie? Yes, go ahead.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Sorry, I thought we were waiting for the coordinator of group 2 to say something.
No, feel free to jump in. Which group were you in?
I don't even know because I got
Okay,
taken
no problem.
and put in.
Sorry.
We're in group 3.
Thank you. So I was in group 3, and I have a couple of comments. Here we are in an equity meeting, and I can tell you with certainty, anybody over 80 years old could not have got through that sticky note exercise.
Yeah.
I couldn't get through it, and I'll tell you why. Of course I can read, and I figured out quickly how to use them. But as the leader of our group, and he was very nice. It's not his fault. I think it's the format's fault. But he would read a sticky note, but my eyes were on another one. And I'm telling you right now, I have no idea what our group wrote. So I'm sure it'd be easy to turn this into I'm incapable. But I just really, I hope information that you're gathering tonight will not be used going forward. I think this needs to be done in person if you're going to take that much input and go that quickly, or get a group and commit to an extra hour so we can actually, I did one sticky note. I don't even know what happened to it. We were going very quickly. So,
Well, let me just say, we don't want the tool to be an impediment to the conversation. So I think the question on the floor was, what would a more inclusive and welcoming community for all residents look like? How do we get there? So whether you put a sticky note or not, you may have thoughts about that. And this is an opportunity to share some of that out as well. So thank you, Julie.
So Julie, do you have thoughts?
I would, how do we talk? Do we raise our hand or how does this work?
You can go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, I guess I'll answer. I don't know. Julie can come back. I would have to agree with whoever wrote the sticky note. I don't see it, but I have half of my family is of one race and about a third is of another, and a quarter, or another little portion is another, and then the rest of us are Caucasian. And I've never had my family feel so uncomfortable in this town until this last year, when we've been told to leave and all these other things. And it's been pretty bad. I was born and raised in Encinitas. I left for 10 years or so to go to college, came back, and I never experienced this kind of toxicity that's been going on in the last year or so, maybe 2 years. It's been real bad, and so bad. Yeah, that's about it. I'm very uncomfortable in the city now. My family is. So luckily my husband's in the military, so we spend half the time in Hawaii and DC. So.
And Rachel, I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you say that you're more uncomfortable, is that racial? Is that what is the source of that?
The source is the equity committee people.
Okay.
Including a couple of people in my little group there who insult us for being white and cisgender, and insult people for being homeowners and things like that. It's real bad. It's a real bad place to be right now if you were born here and you can't change the color of your skin and you're married to a Black man.
Yeah, it's like picking at a scab.
May I speak with Susan Journey on computer?
I think Gavin,
Garvin
was speaking. Okay.
Yeah, I would just echo Rachel's comment. I've never lived in a place so obsessed with race. And I've lived in incredibly diverse communities. And this whole equity thing is like picking at a scab, and it's not helpful.
All right.
Can I make a comment to that too, maybe, please?
Yes, Christine, really let me go to Susan really quickly because she has her hand up, and then we'll come right back to you, Christine.
Hi, are you able to hear me at all?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I've been in the equity meetings. I have been called racist because I've asked for a greater amount of affordable housing. I've been told I know what it really means to stand up for character. And I've never seen the town this divided in more than 20 years by a group that is here to promote equity. And the main argument they have is to attack people out of the queue. It's accomplished just the opposite of whatever was intended.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. All right. Was it Christine?
Yeah, I really want to talk about this because I'm a big supporter of, equal rights. I've been doing this. I did it professionally and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived in Encinitas for over 30 years. And I've got to tell you, the last 2 years, I have honestly thought about putting my house on the market and moving to San Francisco, because basically what's happened is when they put the equity committee in there, if you follow kind of the YIMBA and all this kind of stuff, they're actually trained to go into these towns and call us racist, call us names. Yeah, I'm pure white, but guess what? My father, who was pure white, we do not have any more pure whites in our family. They are either, they are all mixed with something. And so it's real offensive to me, you know, when I have Hispanic grandchildren who were born and raised in this city, to be called by the leader of the equity committee. She's called me, I don't have a clue. I must just be sitting on my high horse because I own a home in Encinitas. She, and since they have brought these people in, all they have done is pit one person against the other instead of coming about this in a non-threatening way to open up open discussions about equity and inequality so we can get the community to come up with types of solutions. But it's very difficult, you know, to be in a multiracial family and, you know, and to be called these things. I mean, I was 31 years old when I moved there, and I bought years ago, no more, no less.
Okay, thank you for that. It sounds like that's similar to what Rachel said as well. So let me move to the next person as well, because we have a couple hands up. So Ms. Tucker, is that?
Hi, Watana Tucker. Can we please just get back to the breakout room report outs? I understand that this is a forum that is not for just all airing our grievances. So I'd really like to spend my time doing what you all have put together tonight.
I'm sorry, she asked.
Do you have a question you'd like to talk about? Do you have anything you'd like to report out, Ms. Tucker, from your breakout group?
I do not, because sorry, we did not appoint a timekeeper, I don't think.
No, that's okay.
Report
No
out
problem.
person.
I can report for 3 hours.
I'd love that, Itai.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to show your screen? I can stop showing mine.
Sure. Okay. There you go. So what I will share is that this is obviously a community that a lot of people love living in, and a lot of people have said that in the group. I think the interesting pieces, a lot of discussion that we had around, is there a problem? And not everyone agree, or not everyone are sure. You see there, I'm not sure in the middle. That was a response to a question I had as do you believe that there's a problem? Because one of the comments was not clear about it, and the answer was, I'm not sure. So I think there's a lack of agreement of whether there is indeed a problem. Some people are citing different numbers, and that's what we're here to look at. We're researchers. So that was, I think, interesting. And one other comment that I'll highlight, and I want to read it because I thought it was very, very, very interesting, is, sorry, now I won't be able to find it. But it's this one. Redlining in the San Diego City kept non-white people out of the North County for decades. Then restrictive covenants did the job. After that, it was simply a matter of enforcing zoning. And I was just struck by all these examples of policies that were brought in this comment, and that focus on the possible, that focus on practices that the city could do. So I thought it was a very, very engaging. And at the very end of our discussion, there was the comment about this being difficult for some people, and that comment was cut at the end. So I'm glad you got to make it anyway.
I want to make a comment about the redlining, by the way. The redlining, what happened in Encinitas, but you guys have to remember at the time that was implemented, Encinitas really wasn't even on the map yet. What I mean by that, I don't even know back in 1932, you know, how many people lived there, but it wasn't very many. So it was very, very small. So, you know, when growth started to take place in Encinitas, it was around 1979. Those policies weren't enacted at that point.
Okay.
So think of Encinitas as a small kind of rural farm town back in 1932.
Thank you. Let me go to the people who have their hands raised. So I have E. Thompson with the hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Elena Thompson here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm a professional realtor who sells homes. and creates dreams for people through housing here in Encinitas. And I have to tell you that we are a very welcoming community. In my over 20 years of being a realtor, there have never, that I know of, been any fair housing violations, racial issues, none of this. So I'm just concerned that, you know, well, one, I would be happy to sell a house to anyone who comes to Encinitas. That's pretty much how we roll here. We're a beach town, a surfers town. We used to be the flower capital of North County, then the yoga capital of North County. And honestly, it really breaks my heart to hear this witch hunt to try to hunt down racial inequities and conduct a racial audit. I think it's completely misplaced in the wrong town. And then lastly, I was surprised that you said you're halfway through the audit that began in April, because I'm a fairly engaged citizen and local realtor concerned about housing and housing issues. And I have never heard of this equity housing study. And I only just got notice of it on Friday. So it just comes as a real surprise. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. So I want to just quickly address that we are certainly not feeling as though this is a witch hunt from us. We haven't been a part of your community and don't have the history that you all have. But from our perspective, we're really coming in, as we do in any community, with respect for your community, a real deep desire to be steeped in your local context and not pass judgment from our own perspectives, but really, as Itai said, use an inquiry-based approach to understand this more. So we appreciate all those comments, but just understand from our perspective, we're coming in with a blank slate, looking at this from a new perspective, I think, and not a perspective of, you know, someone who's gone through the past equity committee and those things. So we believe that you will be glad to hear, you know, as we come and do more periodic updates. We appreciate the conversation that this is new to many people. And so I think that's something to take back as well. Let's see, who else has their hands up? And I know I'm in the interest of time, let me just stop for one moment and ask the Encinitas team how we're looking for time and sort of give us some direction on that.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes for questions. And what I would ask is that you stay muted, you know, raise your hands. We're going to do about 7 more minutes of questions, and then we're going to conclude the workshop for the evening. So please feel free. You have the little option to raise your hand, and we want to just be respectful of everyone's comments and remain muted until called upon. We appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christian. All right, so we have, if you've already said your comment and you want to put your hand down, feel free to lower your hand. If your hand is up, I'll assume you want to make a comment. Tom, Scott, have we heard from you yet?
No.
Okay.
I think one of the problems with understanding something like redlining and other systemic issues is that a lot of people tend to react to it as if you're calling them racists or something like that. But what we need to understand is how these historical things created a system and specifically kept a whole bunch of people from getting generational wealth. And here in Encinitas, we have benefited from an enormous amount of generational wealth. I mean, I put both our kids through college with no college debt whatsoever, simply through the increase in the values of my home over the past 10 years. Now, if you were a family that was redlined 80 years ago and was prevented from getting generational wealth, there's an example of a lack of equity that we somehow need to address. And it doesn't mean that anyone's calling you a racist or anything like that. We're just talking about a systemic issue that we need to figure out how to address.
Indeed, and there's going to be absolutely no finger pointing as part of this work. We've already engaged with a lot of people in Encinitas and heard. So Elena said earlier that she's a realtor and would love to see anybody come and buy a home. And we've heard from many people that we've spoken with that they want to live with their teachers and they want to live with the people who come and work in Encinitas, but maybe they feel that their hands are tied. They would want to do that, but how could you do it? And that's exactly the purpose of the work. Maybe there are some barriers that are impossible to release, but maybe there are some that are possible to release so that some of those teachers could come and live in Encinitas. And that's really what the project is about.
I wanted to jump in one more time, just to make sure that every group got an opportunity to report out on the 3 discussion questions. It's incredibly important for us to get the feedback of every group. Could be from your own perspective if you'd like to give an example regarding one of the questions, but we'd love to hear from every group. So if there's been a group that hasn't reported yet, we'd love to hear from you.
I would like to just share that when I first moved here and had my young sons, that they played, we all were on sidelines together with our beautiful Latinx families. And we've seen a lot of our friends and families have to move away, particularly our Latinx friends and family members, because of the cost of living and stagnating wages. And we just really believe that has to do with the lack of multifamily affordable housing here. And, a lot of us have done deep dive into the housing issue here. And there's just a lack of affordable housing. And also there's been some issues with folks having a harder time that are of color getting loans, getting mortgage loans. So we're also investigating that and finding banks that are more friendly, that have had helped, particularly Union Bank, have helped more of our BIPOC community to get loans. And we're focusing on pushing to get more affordable housing here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I put up breakout group 2. So you actually hit on some of of the things that we did talk about. So lack of affordable housing. Itai mentioned the idea of teachers and service people able to afford and rent homes, that being something that it would look like to be inclusive. Are there any other things people want to report out? Maybe about the idea of why the rest of the region is not as diverse? We just heard some things about that. Anything else people want to report out from the group 2 or any other group that hasn't been heard?
Can I ask a question? No, go ahead.
I want to say,
Rachel? Okay.
Joan, I want to say that many people I know here are against the densification of the community, changing the character of the community. And I don't want that to be interpreted as being against diversity. It's the densification, the traffic jams on Encinitas Boulevard and Leucadia Boulevard, and the changing of the open space. I've been here 32 years, and we moved here because of the open space. And and I don't think that you should assume that is against increase in diversity. It's the densification that many people are against.
Thank you. Anyone else want to report out what was said in their group that hasn't had a chance to, or that you haven't heard anyone else talk about yet tonight?
I'd like to address the short-term rental situation in Encinitas.
Mm-hmm.
So when you compared, I don't know where your group lives. It sounds like you're a national company, so maybe you don't live nearby and understand our area. But when you compared Encinitas to all of the cities in the county, that's a big stretch because we're a coastal community. And for me, the best comparison and the only comparison that you should do is with our coastal neighbors. What happens is when you live right along the coast, the property values shoot through the roof just based on views and access to the ocean and climate. Those three things alone are what drive it. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, I've been here for 30 years and I've come from a very racially diverse place. Has nothing to do with a person's color or sexual orientation. Property values are just very high. Compounding that is we're an attraction to the short-term rental market. So we have a lot of corporations, LLCs, and individual investors buying up our housing stock to rent on the short-term rental market. So our city has been very friendly to short-term rentals. That's Airbnb and VRBO type companies. Our city's been very friendly to that, and a lot of our housing stock has gone to that. And people might say, well, if you open up 5 houses on Nardo, it's not going to help our affordable housing problem. But it will, just like the argument that adding more high density will help the affordable housing problem, so will opening up the high-end stock, because people who already live here will migrate. There are others, people here that are waiting for the right house on Nardo or a view property in Cardiff or this or that. So it does make people shuffle. So there's more to the housing problem than just a racial divide or redlining that happened 100 years ago. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Any final questions? Any final, conversations that happened in your city? Cities get transit occupancy taxes.
I have just a couple. Okay. I have just a couple questions. I kind of take a little bit of offense to the premise that you haven't been here for this, but that our equity, sorry, I'll get my video, that our equity committee kind of kept focusing on that the reason we don't have as much diversity and race is because we don't have cheap housing. I'm so sorry, but my family, it's not the white people who have a lot of money. It's not like that. Everyone has all the different education levels and income levels. This premise that minority races are poor is very insulting. I don't like it, and I don't think it's good for those groups of people. And I sure don't want to strap my nieces and nephews to low income housing type situations and tell them that that's what they should be striving for. I don't like that, first of all. Second, I think a lot of the reason why when I ask my nieces and nephews, why don't you want to live in Encinitas, or why have you not tried to live in Encinitas, or why are you not looking to live here? Well, we don't have big corporations. We might have some school districts and a couple hospitals. We don't have big corporations for them to have their high level jobs after they graduate with their masters and PhDs and doctorates. We just don't have them. I'm a doctor and I've never worked in Encinitas because there's not a big hospital for me. There's no colleges or there's a junior college, but there's no big universities for them that attracts kind of like a higher, a little more diverse population. But that's just my own opinions. But my question for you is, do we know how many, when you compare the different cities, do we know how many people of each type of race are trying to live there and how many are being successful at living there? For instance, if we have a really small rate of success in Encinitas compared to other places, I'm just wondering what that number looks like.
I would just say that we're to your first comment, we're bringing our own process, and it's the same process that we're going through in different cities, and it's not linked to anything that was necessarily said in the equity committee. We have a research-driven process that, like I shared earlier, is going to measure and visualize the what, then the why, then the how, not tied to any perceptions or anything like that. And we're going to follow that process. To your second comment, I'll just say that we're interested both in what people are interested in and in their ability to fulfill their interest. We don't know where the barriers are, and maybe the barriers are in teachers who teach in Encinitas who want to live there and they can't find a way to live there, and we'll identify those barriers. And maybe the barriers are that the teachers don't want to live in Encinitas, and both are equally interesting to us, and we're going to try and help you understand which one of the two it is. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, so we are, I think, at time, and so we're going to close out. We know that there are still some hands raised, and if people want to put some questions in the chat on our way out, we're happy to grab those questions and get some information maybe back to our partners at the City of Encinitas. But we want to just take a moment to thank you all for being here, for coming at 6 o'clock and staying until already 7:20. And we appreciate the engagement that shows. We appreciate your candor tonight, and for engaging with us in these questions and providing your feedback from your own perspectives and thinking through our community agreements, which was really helpful. This is an ongoing project, so we'll continue to work with the city, and we're happy to come back and do additional community meetings and share updates on the progress of the work. And so we look forward to ongoing engagement. We have focus groups coming up, and so we'll continue to get people's lived experiences and hear more from individuals to answer some of the questions that you all asked tonight, which were exactly the kinds of questions that we're looking to get into. So with that, I would just say thank you. And if there's anything, Christian, that you want to say in ending this.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that attended. Your feedback is incredibly important, a part of this process. So thank you for taking the time. We wish you all a very good night, and yeah, we'll be reporting out soon. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Middle school then.
Mm-hmm.